kind of going back to the way you think about Ethereum as a platform, what are some of the applications that you think are sort of useful to you, or just in general you would like to see? And kind of where do you see as there's an opportunity for us to introduce anywhere from a smart contract platform to a blockchain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the short term, I think like the decentralized finance stuff that's been happening definitely is providing things that are useful and curly and providing things that have value to people. And I feel like we've always had this idea in the space that finance is going to come first. And the usual kind of reason why I think that's the case is just because if you compare to existing technology, kind of other outside of blockchain, finance just is the sector that's the most terrible. Like in many countries, like even really developed ones like the United States, like you'd be surprised just how insanely inefficient it is to move money between accounts. And once you start talking about international payments, then it gets even worse. But anywhere outside of payments, like people are already kind of used to, just being able to spin up whatever you want in one click. And so the bar that anything decentralized blockchain has to compete with just purely usability-wise is higher. But I think like now that the technology is starting to get better, like it's definitely at the point where things outside of these kind of narrowly financial applications can really start taking off.
So when you say decentralized finance, are you kind of in your mind referring to some specific kind of financial instruments or subsets of what that includes, or is it just the movement in general where you can have a better efficient system doing the same things we have right now?
It's definitely a broad category. So like, for example, most people would say Maker counts as decentralized finance, Augur counts, Uniswap counts. But then these tends to be fairly kind of pure applications, like stuff just happens inside of the crypto space and people use it, and there's not too much connection to kind of things outside of the blockchain, except for maybe kind of the price feeds, because you do have to like connect up to what the actual value is of like $1 or whatever. But then there's projects that are starting to kind of poke out more and make things that are financial but also kind of more closely connected to real world things. So for example, there's been a couple of projects trying to do smart contract-based insurance. And these tends to be the parametric insurance applications. So they say, you put money into a smart contract, and if, say, a flood happens, or there's not enough water, or the temperature is like above some value, then you automatically get a payout. And I know there's a project called Hurricane Guard that's been trying to do this for natural disasters. There's something in Sri Lanka trying to do it for crop insurance. So that kind of area seems like something that more and more things are happening in.
And I guess like maybe a bit briefly, what are some of the, I guess, barriers to entry right now in terms of implementing these types of solutions compared to like kind of offering the same in the traditional finance? So right now, a lot of the models we see in DeFi are sort of collateral based. Do you think there's a way to sort of evolve past that?
Evolving past collateral based, not sure, because
they're over collateral.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely improve collateral efficiency, but then you could argue that the collateral kind of based design of the whole thing is an advantage in some ways. But like in terms of improving kind of collateral efficiency, right? One of the interesting things that we can think about is that, like, I know this kind of model exists in Africa and exists in other places too. There's these kind of rotating kind of clubs where people just kind of coordinate to kind of put money into a pool, and the designs differ, but basically it's to kind of help people save, but potentially you could also turn it into an insurance sort of kind of application. And so if you try to kind of take these social models where you say you have kind of groups of people that are participating together, then often enough they can reduce the amount of capital that you need, because you can sort of share more.
And I guess in this case, like, where do you think identity and reputation kicks in, or is that even directly related?
Yeah, identity and reputation is definitely something that's very important. I think, So first of all, well, it depends what you mean by identity and reputation, because the word just means
very
like
broad.
5 different things. Like one meaning of identity is just being able to prove that you who's trying to spend the money is the same and like whatever it is that received the money. And this is just user account security, but it's basically an identity problem. And there the challenge is that like the default approach to doing this is that you just have one key, but then if your key gets lost or if your key gets stolen, then you're basically screwed. And trying to move beyond that and trying, like, one of the things I'm a fan of is this kind of social recovery approach that says, you know, you have 5 friends and they each get a share of your key, and it's kind of mathematically set up in such a way that any 3 of your 5 friends can recover your key if you lose it. You could do a similar thing for key revocations. So things like that are something that I'm interested in. And the nice thing there is also that if we can create a kind of robust kind of identity management solution like just for doing things like that, then you can actually kind of migrate it beyond just on blockchain things and even just to use it as an identity system for off blockchain applications. So that's one kind of identity, just this kind of purely sort of self-attested. A second kind of identity is these kind of anti-Sybil metrics. So this is coming up with some kind of token where it's easy to get one, but it's like extremely difficult to get many. And this is useful for like voting schemes. It's useful for a lot of applications. But this is the sort of thing that, and you could definitely use blockchains as an ingredient, but there's also this big design problem of how do you actually make these systems. And then the third kind of identity basically is reputation, which is that like it's not just about proving you are something, and it's not just about proving you are a unique human. It's about proving that you have certain properties, right? And this could be kind of other people attesting to your trustworthiness. It could be other people or even organizations saying, you know, we've verified something about this person. Government saying we verified something about this person. But like then we start kind of talking about this idea that you have this ecosystem of the ability of identities to make claims about each other, and that's something that you can definitely leverage for like reputation and credit and all these other things.
I hope everybody's taking notes. There's like 4 ideas for how to do identity hack here this weekend. I guess one other thing, sort of what we've seen in terms of historically, a lot of new and breakthrough technologies let you sort of leapfrog some of the existing infrastructures. In terms of kind of seeing where Ethereum or blockchain in general plays a role in certain geographies, how do you kind of think about use cases for those types of things, anywhere from like maybe different ways of voting or finding out misappropriation of funds to like other unique use cases that may now be possible? Do you have any thoughts on sort of the topic here?
Yeah, and there's definitely an opportunity for blockchain-based projects to just take a lead in areas where existing in infrastructure is either in a very far behind or just doesn't really exist at all, right? Like there's definitely parts of the world where you can just say, well, oh, you know, what's the point of this when you have your centralized like CeFi apps that you can just use to send money to other people in a couple of seconds? But that's not something. And even just going beyond money, like even just things like insurance, things like even just giving people the ability to invest in things, and all of these kind of other bigger services that are part of finance that go beyond just like sending money to people. Also outside of finance, like even identity and reputation too. Like I think these kind of socially driven models of identity could even potentially leapfrog more centralized models of identity in places where the kind of centralized models of identity haven't really been fully established yet. So I think that's something interesting, because it makes sense, right? Because like the information about who is kind of trustworthy and like who's willing to vouch for whom is something that kind of is pretty decentralized thing. And
more social than.
Yeah. I mean, the concept that it's something that kind of gets centralized into these kind of formalized institutions and numbers is itself pretty new. So that's also something that I think is worth looking at.
No, it's awesome. So I guess finance is not the only use case that we see for Ethereum or blockchains in general. There's a lot of people at this hackathon that want to build stuff and are looking for ideas. What are some of the things that'd be cool for you to see people hack on? Anywhere from things on your wish list to kind of cool improvements or additions that you would like to see?
I guess, and I think I've already said a lot of the things that I kind of care about, especially, and I especially want to try to kind of see things that either move beyond finance into these other areas or kind of combine elements of finance with elements of these other areas. The other category of things I haven't mentioned is probably kind of supply chain related stuff, but I mean, that's just an area that I personally am kind of less familiar with, like exactly what people have done so far and and what the benefits are. But it's definitely something that's worth exploring. In general, I'd say just innovative approaches to just solving these problems in terms of just people's ability to kind of connect with each other. And trust each other and all these things.
In a verifiable way.
Yeah. Another thing I care about also is trying to, this is technically harder to the next level, but doing all of those things while preserving privacy. And I mean, zero-knowledge proof technology has just advanced forward leaps and bounds over the last year, and it's something that there's basically tools for it to start working with. So it's definitely something that's worth starting to explore. And you definitely want to take privacy seriously in these applications, right? You don't want the fact that, oh, Bob trusted Charlie 60 points, but then Bob decided to decrease his rating to trusting Charlie 30 points. You don't necessarily want that to be on a global public ledger. So that's for a lot of these applications, I think there's ways to do zero-knowledge stuff to get the benefits, but without without kind of uncovering everything. So one example of this that I liked is in cases where all you want is basically one of the things I dislike about kind of the way the path that kind of many parts of the internet are taking is this trend toward just using centralized identity as a crutch for everything. And basically because it's where often enough the problem you're trying to solve is much smaller, right? So for example, if the problem you're trying to solve is just making it difficult for people to create 10,000 fake accounts, then sure, you could solve that by just capturing everyone's identity, but then you broke privacy. But there are ways to do it where you still preserve privacy, right? So for example, if you have some existing identity system, then on top of that, you can put a Zcash-like kind of anonymizing and mixing gadget, and then basically you just use zero-knowledge proofs to prove that you are one of these approved identities that's been checked by some system without revealing which one. And then you also reveal a magic number so that you can't kind of reuse that identity again without actually revealing which one it is that you've consumed. So things like that I'm also pretty interested in. Also, when we talk about account security solutions, a big part of this is just usability. You want these things to be and accounts this is account security is just a hugely important problem, right? Because if you actually want people to be using decentralized anything, then they're going to be interacting with it through some kind of identity, and either that identity is broken or that identity is secure because it's controlled by some centralized mechanism, but then you're kind of losing a lot of the benefit, or it's secure because of some decentralized mechanism, but then that's the thing that we have to build, right? So if you want to actually use any of these decentralized financial solutions and expect people other than kind of existing tech geeks to be able to use them and benefit from them, then you need some kind of account security solution that works for people, right? And that works for people that just haven't had that much exposure to computers yet. And then that's a hard challenge.
Absolutely, and it also sort of ties in with the scalability of the underlying platform too. And you kind of touched on E 2.0, but could you sort of describe sort of the goals of what the 2.0 clients are and kind of the phases, and just give us an update on the progress?
Sure. So, and for those who haven't heard this before, I mean, the Ethereum 2.0, like first of all, it's the two kind of major flagship components of it. One is Casper, which is our proof-of-stake algorithm, which replaces mining proof-of-work consensus with something that at least we consider to be much more efficient. And the second part is sharding, which is a kind of massive scalability improvement that happens because you don't need every computer in the network to process like every transaction in the network anymore. So it's split up into 3 phases, where phase 0 basically does proof of stake. Phase 1 does sharding, but just sharding for kind of verification of data availability. And phase 2 does kind of full sharding, including verifying like transaction execution, smart contracts, and all these other things. So at the end of phase 2, it's a complete system, but then for phase 0 and phase 1, it's still kind of useful for some things. So currently, the phase 0 spec is like very close to completion. The phase 1 spec is kind of further behind, but the fundamental components are just all in place, and it's just an editing job. Phase 2 is still a bit further away, but it's rapidly working on that. In terms of client implementations, right, so there's these multiple teams that are mostly even not part of the Ethereum Foundation itself, though many of them are supported by grants, that are building clients, so basically like nodes that would run as part of the Ethereum 2.0 network. And that's like so far the ones that are furthest ahead, so that would probably be Lighthouse, Nimbus, maybe Prismatic. They've been, and I know Nimbus was the first to like publish a testnet. I know Lighthouse is going to publish a testnet fairly soon. So it's definitely getting to that stage.
Would you sort of mind just telling us sort of what the performance improvements end up being with these implementations, and kind of what is the change we're seeing?
Sure. So with sharding, the goal is to get about 1,000-factor increase in scalability. Basically, just the way you do this is through not requiring every computer to process every transaction, right? Every computer only processes a small portion of transactions, and that removes the kind of biggest scalability bottleneck in the whole design.
1000x. That's awesome. One of the things we've done in some of our previous chats is a section called underrated or overrated. And the way that section works is that I'm going to say a topic, and you get to comment on if this is underrated or if it's overrated, and sort of why. So I'll kind of list a handful of topics, and maybe we can get some more from the audience on Twitter. But I'll kind of start off with DeFi, underrated or overrated.
Definitely slightly getting overrated at this point. But I mean, the parts that are underrated, I think, is like the part that basically tries to kind of push this stuff from theory into practice and tries to see, like, what does it actually mean to get, like, if this stuff provides value to like people even just outside of the crypto space, how do we actually realize that value? And that's something that I think it would be good to get more attention on.
Specifically, stablecoins, underrated or overrated?
Probably, and I'd say people talk about them enough at this point.
So is that underrated or overrated?
Honestly, also slightly overrated at this
point. We'll move
point.
on to the next.
Yeah.
Bitcoin forks.
Bitcoin forks. I mean, I think BSV is like still overrated for as long as the market cap has multiple digits. I mean, Bitcoin Cash, I think, even actually underrated at this point, and basically just because they've like, I mean, if you actually follow the community, they've just become considerably more sane ever since they've expunged the Bitcoin SV people, and like they're going, like they're getting Schnorr signatures ahead of Bitcoin. Like that's
actually
cool.
impressive.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, they've got like real technical talent in there. It's no, it's getting interesting.
What about forks in general?
Forks in general, I'd say underrated. Like I think at this point, especially if you want to launch a new decentralized chain, then like forking an existing one is like I think even better than doing an ICO or like an I whatever O. Basically, just because and you just get a much better coin distribution that way. You also again can tap into an existing community. More people like you and fewer people hate you. And
Occasionally.
yeah, I mean, it does have a lot of benefits to it, and like even if you like do a fork and add a pre-mine, like it's just like that space I think has actually been kind of underexplored relative to just other ways of launching projects that do have tokens in them.
Oh, that makes sense. What about blockchain governance?
Depends which circle you're talking in. I think if the circle is crypto, then definitely overrated. If the circle is Ethereum, actually honestly overrated as well. Like basically because I think like especially in the short term, well, if we're talking about governance of Ethereum, then most of the things that Ethereum needs to just survive and prosper the next couple of years are not really contentious governance issues. Like, we know we need ETH 1.x, we know we need layer 2, we know we need ETH 2.0 and Casper and sharding. And it's, yeah, like I'm not convinced that kind of tweaks to governance itself can really improve things by that much in that regard. I mean, what can improve things is definitely tweaks to things like ecosystem funding, for example.
That was actually my next topic, ecosystem funding, underrated or overrated?
Definitely still slightly underrated at this point. I mean, I'm actually really happy that the Ethereum community is starting to kind of start tackling these issues of funding public goods in the ecosystem seriously and trying to experiment with different approaches that go beyond the Ethereum Foundation. Like, I think it's definitely healthy that the foundation is not the only source of funding, because just with every organization has weaknesses, every institution has blind spots, and so the more that we have to cover for each other's blind spots, I think the better a chance the Ethereum ecosystem has.
Absolutely, and kind of similar to what we've just kind of talked about, the approach the ETH 2.0 clients are taking to build this thing independently of the foundation. Do you have any comments on that? Is that underrated, overrated, unexplored? How do you see that?
It depends which aspect. So I think in general the model has been very successful. Like and the original goals of this, right, were basically to say that we're going to push the job of developing these ETH 2.0 clients outside of the foundation, and the foundation is going to develop one client, which is the Python client, as a reference implementation. But it's deliberately written in a slow language, and so it's
what's the rationale for kind of offloading that to?
Yeah, I mean, we basically just want to prevent the foundation from becoming too big a point of centralization, because in ETH 1.0 we've just noticed it's become this kind of Geth and parity duopoly, and it would be nice to, I mean, the fact that it's a duopoly and not a monopoly is something that actually saved us during the denial of service attacks a couple of years ago, but it would be healthier to have even more clients. So we want to have that kind of balance of power in the community, and also just kind of ensure against the risk that the Ethereum Foundation will just have internal governance issues and not be able to get its acts together. So it's one of these kind of strategies of, like, let's support different approaches and hope, and these approaches are going to work pretty differently, and even if one of them succeeds, then the things can get off the ground. Now, of course, and I think the Ethereum Foundation has been done quite well over the last year. Over the last year and a half in many ways. And there's definitely many ways that it's improving still, but I think the grant program has been one of the biggest successes. The thing that I think is, that I think it's doing, the ETH 2.0 client ecosystem is doing a bit incorrectly, is that I think it's gotten, the level of decentralization has gotten to the point where it's duplicating things too much. Like we're talking about like, how many implementations was it? Nimbus, Prismatic, Lighthouse, Jasper, Pegasus, Trinity, Harmony, Geth, the chain safe, Dean Eigenman's thing, I forget the name, like 10.
ETH.
And yes, ETH. So basically, like these 10, like going from 1 to 4 and 5 is good, but then these last 5, like, first of all, they're clear. There's no way that we're gonna have enough resources to push all 10 to the best level of quality. And so I think the thing that these implementations should try to do is they should try to potentially specialize more and specialize more in different things. So, like, for example, one of them could specialize more in light clients. The other could specialize more in like developer tools or validator tools, and potentially they could even like share some components. Right? So basically, instead of having 10 things that are copying the same thing, like you still need some amount of copying for redundancy, but a bit less than you have now. But instead, you have more kind of branching out into different areas and into different philosophies. Also, kind of going like light client first as one branch that would be good to see. Mobile first, which is pretty similar. A light client for ETH2 inside of ETH1 and like inside of other blockchains. A light client for ETH2 inside of a Snark circuit. Like there's definitely different things that you can do, and I think trying to be more kind of creative and imaginative in that way is something that would be interesting to see more of the 2.0 teams doing.
No, it's awesome. So one of the questions I kind of got before when I was coming up with the list of questions here was sort of, it feels like a lot of the contributors are from the US or North America or Europe. Mm-hmm. How can somebody who's not one of these regions, like how can they get involved in kind of this ecosystem, the development, and kind of just in general, like with these projects? Like, do you have any thoughts on sort of what the ways are, and maybe kind of contrast that with the grants program by the Ethereum Foundation as well?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd say like even like Asia as a region is starting to do better and better tech-wise. Like I was just in Korea last week, and there was a team there that was just working on a pretty novel way to build a Plasma implementation, and they actually got pretty far. So that made me really happy. I think it depends on what region. So some regions I think are handicapped by language. Like basically they like the resources are mostly in English, and if you don't speak English, and even if you don't speak English as a first language, that just puts a huge barrier in front of you trying to participate in the ecosystem. So supporting translations is one thing that we as a community can do to help. Otherwise, also just education in general, but then if you have those things, then like if people have the knowledge and the skills and kind of know where to go, like I mean, a lot of the teams are pretty global, and they'll be happy to just have contributors from like Africa or India or just South America and anywhere, but that's, there's obviously a long way between kind of the status quo today and everyone who potentially could be contributing, like actually having that knowledge. So trying to close those gaps is definitely something that's important.
Absolutely. Sort of tangential to what we've talked about, I wanted to ask sort of the question that I think that's kind of been popping up a lot recently. To a lot of the people in the world, certain messaging apps are the internet, by all means. And when you have sort of a scenario where anywhere from different apps having hundreds of millions to billions of users, to the audience there, that's kind of what they know and kind of see as how do you get access to information.
Mm-hmm.
If any of them kind of offer anywhere from decentralized type solutions to kind of issuing their own money or currencies, and kind of just promote financial applications leveraged by blockchain, do you think that's a good thing? Is that a net positive? Does that kind of negate any of the existing kind of beliefs that either you or the community holds? And kind of how do you perceive that?
And that's definitely one of those kind of double-edged swords. Right? Like it's like a big part of. I guess it depends on like the application. It depends on kind of whether like what you see the benefit of like blockchains and decentralization as being. But I mean, at least to me, it's like a big part is definitely just kind of empowering people, not just as consumers, but also as producers. And that's something that I think like blockchains even just do really well, because it's not just that anyone can use an app, it's a dApp, it's also that anyone can just go ahead and build one. And that's something that I think is like really valuable, and we should try to preserve more.
No, that's fair. So we're actually just going to move into the Q&A part here, and there's a lot of questions that I've received so far, so I'll try to ask as many as possible. And I'm going to start off by the first one, which is, will the blockchain data stay in gigabytes, or what are the plans for it to be smaller in the future?
The blockchain data. The history can only grow, right? But what we are thinking, the client developers are thinking of doing is kind of pruning history. So either like not storing history that's older than say 1 year, or just moving it to some different data structure, like could be IPFS or some kind of sharded data store of some kind. So that would knock things down. The size of the state, so the amount of information you need to have on hand to just validate the next block, that's something that there are proposals to try to decrease. So there's the rent proposal, there's the stateless client proposal. So those are things that are kind of starting to happen. So there's definitely plans to try to reduce the kind of storage requirements of an Ethereum node in multiple ways.
No, for sure. I guess one other question we have from the audience is, what are sort of the biggest ways E2.0 will change how people build their dApps?
I think just as a developer, being kind of relying, the environment is going to become more asynchronous. So because like especially if you have a dApp that scales to more than one shard, like you're not going to be able to communicate between different shards exactly the same way as you can communicate inside of like one shard or inside of ETH 1.0 today. So coming up with kind of programming patterns that deal with that reality, I think is going to be one of the challenges. Also, I expect data to be cheaper relative to execution. So approaches that are more kind of, and relative to state. So expect approaches that are more kind of data heavy and less execution heavy and state heavy on chain are going to start making more sense. Those are we're hoping that block times are going to get faster, and that they're going to get more regular, and that kind of short-range forks are going to become more rare. And so the experience will be a bit closer to what you can expect to get out of a centralized system.
Okay, well, from a question from a tweet that you did earlier today, what would the world have looked like if you had gotten the internship at Ripple?
I don't know. Like,
we can skip it.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite meme?
My favorite meme.
Specifically, the one you would choose to represent yourself.
Oh, that's not my favorite meme. I don't know. I don't really have a list of like favorite memes.
What are some of your favorite memes?
Am I supposed to have like a list of memes on hands that I like? Like, how do I answer this?
I don't keep up with the millennial culture anymore. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll come back to this one.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. Okay.
On another less serious note, who do you think is Ethereum's biggest competitor?
It depends. I mean, well, ultimately, existing centralized systems and new centralized systems that try to kind of take just enough elements of blockchaining to look cool, but actually just are the same old stuff that we've had for decades.
I guess when you say that, does that mean you kind of envision this as a general purpose, one solution for everything type platform, or is it more of the fundamental technology itself lets you do this thing, but different solutions?
Ethereum is definitely not kind of by itself not optimal for every use case. I mean, there are plenty of cases where you just want to build centralized things. There's plenty of cases where you need decentralization, but you don't need a blockchain. There's cases where like you just want some really high performance specialized thing. Sometimes you might want some layer 2 thing that's on it that connects into Ethereum. So there's definitely different trade-offs, and for different applications it makes sense to do things in different ways.
No, that makes sense. In terms of, so there's a question that says, is there a possibility that nation states could censor or block Ethereum or dApps? And if so, how would they do that?
Could nation states censor, block Ethereum or dApps? There's definitely things that they can do easily that they're not doing already. The simplest one is just banning exchanges. Like, if you just make it like 5 times harder for people to get cryptocurrency, then that just makes it significantly harder for any application that depends on it, like even the non-financial ones, to get very large-scale adoption. I mean, will the space be able to kind of survive if if most of the world does that? Even that's an unproven hypothesis. I mean, if they want to do more, then there's definitely all the different kind of ways that they could attack it, but then there's ways that that platforms could harden themselves, and then it starts becoming pretty complicated.
Do you kind of envision that as a cat and mouse game, or is it more of?
And there's definitely cats and there's definitely mice. So yeah.
One. That's factually correct.
Did you know there's also pigeons?
One other question we have from the audience, and we'll kind of get maybe 1 or 2 more in, and then we'll wrap
this up. So
when
when I visited Korea a couple of weeks ago, I saw a meerkat. Okay, go ahead. What's the question?
Do you think side chains will be redundant in the future? And kind of maybe for context, kind of just go over what they are.
So I guess if by side chain you mean this kind of older idea that you have chains that just have some kind of connection to some other chain and that don't really have, where the security model basically is that you do have to trust the side chain. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think like there's not much need for those. Like the only kind of side chain that really makes sense is the non-custodial ones like Plasma, I would say. Plasma just basically is the word for the category of non-custodial side chains. So I'm definitely kind of bullish on those things. Otherwise, like things that require trusting kind of specific groups of nodes where like it's difficult for users from far away to determine whether or not they could be trustworthy, like why do that?
Sure. I got 2 more and then we'll wrap this up. So one question from the audience is, what are some of the risks for this ecosystem or things that keep you up at night?
Definitely just the biggest risk is us not being able to build things kind of fast enough. And like the usual thing that people say is, like, oh, if we don't build things fast enough, then some other blockchain competitor will take over. But the other risk, as I mentioned, that potentially is even larger, is that if the space takes too long, then like existing centralized systems will just continue improving themselves, and we'll have lost a big opportunity to just make decentralized applications and data layers like actually be the foundation for like a generation of applications getting built on them.
No, that's great. And kind of just to finally end, what does decentralization mean to you, and why is it important?
Yeah, and decentralization so means lots of different things to different people, and it also just depends on what application you're building. I would say some of the biggest benefits are like a big one is just trust, right? So like if you're building something and you intend it to be like infrastructure or like a platform that other people build on top of, that's something that really just should be decentralized, because that's like the only way you have to just really make like clearly show to your users that you're not going to kind of sweep the rug up from under their noses, or whatever the expression is, when they've already built the platform and they're locked in. Like even just the fact that we use the word platform to refer to just centralized things maintained by one guy is kind of sad, honestly. Like I think if we're building things that entire kind of entire economy ends up relying on, it should just be something that's kind of common infrastructure that once it's built, there's not like one party that can either get hacked, causing causing the whole thing to stop working, or kind of become a monopoly and start trying to extract rent from all of that, or get captured from some political interest that represents only a small subset of the users of the system. So I think having some kind of properly decentralized base layers for many things is something that makes sense. I'm also just generally interested in this idea of just building new kinds of mechanisms and new kinds of ways to kind of motivate people to collaborate with each other. And like that could mean economic incentives. It could mean things like DAOs. It could also mean social incentives, possibly some combination of both. And there, the goal, like one of the big goals is just like more decentralized approaches just are how you get better information efficiency. Like as I mentioned, right, most of the information about how trustworthy people are, for example, like who's like what things are valuable to whom, how valuable are different things. Like that doesn't exist in central servers. That exists kind of split up between all 8 billion of us. And so that's like these more decentralized approaches that allow people to kind of participate in all parts of the and all sides of the ecosystem, I think, are something that are really valuable in that sense.
With that, Vitalik, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. A massive thank you again for Vitalik and Kartik. We really enjoyed your presentation. And also a massive thank you again to Vitalik for coming all the way through to South Africa for this event. I know it's your first time in South Africa, and I know that everyone in the community is very excited to have you here. So, yep, just another round of applause maybe. Thank you. So coming up next, I'd like to intro you guys to some of the people that have made this event possible. It takes a lot of time to get events like this up and running and off the ground, and it wouldn't be possible without the help of our sponsors. So we'd like to say a massive thank you to all of you as well. And then I'd actually like to bring to the stage now over the next few minutes as well, some of the sponsors that have really helped contribute to this. I'd like to encourage all of the hackers as well to please make use of the sponsors that are here. They're here as well to help you and guide you through your projects. They're all lined up at the back usually, so if you do work on any of the projects and you do need help, they are there to assist you, and you can learn a lot from them. So I highly encourage you to do that. So our first sponsor that I'd like to call up is New Cypher. They're not actually here by the stage right now, so I'm not sure where they're at. Justin. Woo! All right, thank you so much. Can I help you get set up?
There's no mic stand.
No, there's a mic stand here. I can help you get set up.
Hey, friends. Quite into it. I think I have slides that are coming up here too, right? Oh, I see. I'm in full control. Look at this. Oh yeah, I need to hold it right over the mic, huh? So I'm coming up to the stage at or around 9 o'clock anyway to do like a workshop. So I don't see any need to go into any kind of depth right now. I figured I'd just kind of play the kalimba for you for a minute. I do want to encourage everyone to meet everyone else. I know we're going to spend a lot of time hacking, but make sure that you get up and move around and meet all these wonderful, friendly, happy hackers throughout the room, throughout the weekend. And if you find yourself in a position where you're saying, some particular power structure, some big corporation or government might not like this, maybe we ought to turn around. Let yourself take a deep breath and realize you're probably onto something. And don't turn around. It seems to me that the principle of nonviolent political change in the information age has to mean that instead of the barrel of a gun, we find political power stemming from mathematical primitives and especially from cryptographic primitives. And it's places like this that flow from the ground becomes something real and powerful. We're offering $2,500 for a bounty, which I guess all of a sudden seems sort of trivial in the great universal scheme of things. The kalimba makes everything sound really melodramatic, you know? It's kind of hard to like... Some information here, and this will be repeated on a slide in my presentation in just a little while. So, you know, obviously you're all going to stick around for the rest of the opening ceremony. I hope you also stick around for my workshop. Then I'll also be back here tomorrow at 2 o'clock to play a music set and do some more talking about, you know, cryptographic nonsense. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Justin. I think that was amazing. That was very fun. So I'd like to welcome to the stage our next sponsor, which is UNICEF. If you'd like to come up and say some words.
So I don't have any music. I'm really sorry. Don't know how to follow that. Hopefully this is somewhat as exciting. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about UNICEF, but then after about a really exciting opportunity for everyone in this room. So in case you don't know what UNICEF is, it's quite a large organization. It's a $5.5 billion organization per year. We have over 12,000 staff. We are the largest purchaser of pencils in the world. Yeah, random fact. And we also buy about 34% of the world's vaccinations. So when you think of UNICEF, you don't necessarily think about blockchain, but I happen to be from a team called UNICEF Innovation that actually started exploring blockchain back in 2015. We are now a team of 3 full-time and an extended team. So back in 2015, we started looking at blockchain and ID. 2016, we had our first multi-sig contract, which for a big organization like UNICEF was a huge success to be able to replicate our signing authorities using a multi-sig. We run some hackathons, and even some of our countries like UNICEF France, UNICEF Australia, and New Zealand accept crypto as a form of donation. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm actually here to talk about our innovation fund. So we invest in early stage startups in emerging or developing countries, the UNICEF program countries, and we offer up to $100,000 of non-equity funding plus a year of support. And the reason that I'm talking about that here today is because some of your projects may qualify for this. So I want to dive into that a little bit. We don't just invest in blockchain startups, we invest in a variety of different types of techs, everything from data science to XR/VR to drones, and most recently blockchain. We like to take startups and help them grow. They don't necessarily have to have some immediate link to social impact. We're here to help you with that. What we are looking for is the potential for growth. So back in December of 2018, we made our first large investment into startups. So to give you an idea what some of those are, we invested in Statwig, which is a vaccine supply chain company based out of India. We invested in ETHCAPETOWN, which is a community currency platform based out of Tunisia. Prescripto, a prescription company based in Mexico. OS City, which is data transparency based in Mexico. ETHCLabs, which is matching small entrepreneurs with financiers, as well as ETHCLabs, W3, which does data connectivity. So if you have a gig of data and you want to resell some of that, how would you do that? These are all blockchain-based. They're based on different types of blockchains, and they'll be part of our cohort for the next year. But what I wanted to share with you is that we're doing another round of funding. So applications will close in July, and we have a website that you can go to. So if you, after this hackathon, decide to work on your project a little bit more, you could apply and potentially get funding. You don't just get funding, though. You get access to various types of mentors. So we provide open source mentors, business mentors, technical mentors. We have the cohort come together at one time for a large workshop, and you get access to even more mentors. And you get access to some different UNICEF folks from different countries. In terms of what you need to be able to be eligible for this fund, so your project has to be based in one of UNICEF program countries. You need to have a working prototype and some initial results. So really, if you build the prototype this weekend, go and test it on a few folks so that you have some initial results, and you'll be good for the fund. More results, the better. It has to be some type of frontier tech. You happen to be here for blockchain, so that's an easy check mark. And it has to have some way to make a positive impact. And like I said, if it's not immediately apparent how the link to children, where that link is, we can definitely help you with that. We don't just look at the tech, though. We look at a variety of things. So we look at what team, what is your business model, what is the tech. So it's a larger variety. All of this is on our website. And so I'll leave you with that. The website, you can look at some of the areas where we're interested in. It's unicefstories.org/blockchain, but I'll be here all weekend as well, so feel free to come and see me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina, for that. That was super exciting to see. Actually, so much opportunity can come out of this hackathon, and I really hope that you guys go for the opportunity and you really run with it. I'd like to chat to you just quickly about a little bit more about the prizes that are coming up. So I know we've gone over a little bit from NewCypher and from UNICEF, but NewCypher will award $2,500 for the most interesting project, built utilizing any NewCypher technology. MakerDAO will award $3,000 to the team with the best use of the MakerDAO query API. You guys can all this information is also available online. The Ethereum Foundation, there's about 200,000 Rand in prizes as well. The Ethereum Grid will award 500 DAI for the best use of gridethereum.org toolset. ENS will award $200 to be paid in ETH or DAI to each of the 5 best projects that incorporate ENS. And Raiden will award the most innovative use case built using the Raiden API or the best Raiden enhancement hack with $2,000 in Raiden tokens. But yeah, all of this information can also be found on ethcapetown.com/prizes. So if you guys want to take a little bit of a deeper look into that, I'd like to quickly now just go through the schedule for the rest of the evening and for the event for the next weekend. After this presentation, we have a couple of workshops coming up. So they'll actually be in the, I think they're on the main stage, or in the workshop rooms. So that's kind of, we're going to be a few preppers. Some of the sponsors are giving talks on how to use their technology as well. So that'll be an interesting one for the hackers to attend. There'll be a couple of tech talks as well. The sponsors and the mentors will be in and around helping you all out. Are the mentors sitting in the room actually? Can you guys raise your hands? So any of the guys with their hands up as well, or the white badges, they can help you out if you need any assistance with your projects. And then also, like I said, the sponsors, they're here to help you. They're here to give you some guidance. If you do have any questions, guys, you really need to use them. It'll help a lot. Happier note, there's free food and drinks all weekend. Woo! The braai was really good. Thank you so much to our caterers as well, and to our team that have been helping organize all of the food for the weekend. I hope you guys still continue to enjoy it for the rest of the weekend. And then lastly, when the event ends off kind of with the closing ceremony on Sunday, after that we have the after party at the Grand Africa Beach Cafe. It's just around the corner. Beautiful venue. You guys are going to love it, and it's sponsored by IQ. There's a meditation session, I think, tomorrow at 10 a.m. It'll be at the back. Oh, meditation session here. If you guys want to get more zen and chill out a little bit after all the hacking, it might be a good way to get you in the zone. We can ask Justin to come through and maybe also play for you guys. So yeah. This event for me, it's very exciting as well, because I've been in the space or at least in South Africa, and watching it grow for the past few years. And I'm really, really grateful to have these sponsors that we do have. I'd just like to do a quick run through of all of the sponsors that we have. And if we could please just have a quick round of applause for our gold sponsor, New Cypher. They really have contributed a lot to this event, and we're very grateful for it, because else it wouldn't have happened. And then also to MakerDAO, they really also helped us a lot with this. And then definitely to our bronze sponsors, Raiden, ENS, IQ, BrainBot, Taurus, and UNICEF. For all of the hackers as well that are in the space and are going to be in the space, we have kind of an open public chat kind of place for you guys to go to. It's at ethcapetown.com/chat. So if you guys just want to chat amongst yourselves, that's maybe not in the Telegram group or the Discord. There's also this chat as well, which you can use. But yeah, so like moving on now kind of to the rules and the criteria. It's a maximum of 4 team members. I know you guys have probably done a lot of your team formation, but if you're still getting into that, or you still have a few people that need teammates, you can finish up team formation, maximum of 4. You must all be physically at the event. No PowerPoints are allowed during when you're presenting to the judges. You have to actually demo something. I would maybe recommend that you record your demo beforehand, just in case something goes wrong during your actual demo and we're waiting for something to sync or something to come through. It would be a little bit easier to have it on video. And then all code must be written at the hackathon and disclosed. So these are all really important rules that you guys might end up being disqualified if you don't follow. And then finalists will be chosen based on technicality, originality, practicality, design, and the wow factor. You can go and also read up on this at ethcapetown.com/prizes. So all the information will be there. So finishing up now with just a few venue rules and logistics. This is South Africa and this is Cape Town. Like, we got a good vibe in here and we have security around. But if you are leaving the venue or if you're walking around, just try not to walk around alone at night. Rather just catch an Uber. They're reasonably priced. If you really can't afford an Uber, like, come and chat to us and we'll make a plan for you or something. But ideally, just try and stay safe, be vigilant. Also with your laptops and your cell phones and everything, like I said, we are quite a tight community here, but maybe just keep an eye on them. Make sure you're aware of what's happening. The no smoking on the oceanside patio, I don't know if that's still a thing. Yeah, okay, cool. No smoking on that side, really, so you can go and smoke on that side if you want to smoke. And then an important one is just please no food or drinks on the fat sacks, the big beanbag things over there. It's because they were very, very kindly sponsored to us by Fat Sack, and we really don't want to return them damaged. So please, if you could just be mindful of that for us as well. Oh, and then also on Saturday, there's the Two Oceans Marathon, which is great for Cape Town, but it might cause a few road delays if you're coming into the waterfront. I don't know if we have the road maps or road closures anywhere online, but I'll probably try and drop it onto Telegram a little bit later for you guys. But yeah, that's everything. Other than that, you guys, yeah, good luck, and good luck with the hackathon. You can actually start hacking now. Welcome.